Why did the whispers in the library stacks always feel louder than spoken words? And why did Professor Aldridge's smile never reach his pale, calculating eyes when he looked at my work? These questions haunted me, Kofi Mensah, every agonizing day of my final year at the venerable, ivy-strangled Stonehaven University. As I presented my linguistics thesis proposal for the third and final time, the air in the wood-paneled seminar room was thick with the scent of old paper and older privilege, and the 5 members of the review committee, all of them white like polished bone china, arranged in a semicircle of quiet, supreme judgment, shifted in their leather chairs with palpable boredom. My topic, phonemic resonances and morphosyntactic ghosts in the Adzei tongue, was, to them, an academic joke. The Adzei language, spoken by a pre-colonial West African civilization, had been declared extinct by European linguists a century ago, its last traces recorded in the fragmentary, condescending notes of a British colonial officer. To the Stonehaven Department of Philology, it was a dead end, a minor footnote in the grand narrative of language they controlled. But to me, it was a scream in the silence, a legacy whispered in the cadence of my own Ghanaian grandfather's proverbs, a puzzle whose final piece I was sure I held. Professor Alistair Aldridge, the department head, a man whose tweed jacket seemed to armor him against any idea newer than 1950, finally broke the silence with a sigh that was a masterpiece of disdain. "Mr. Mensah," he began, his voice a dry rustle, "your diligence is commendable, but this persistent focus on a linguistic ghost, a cultural vapor, is a strategic error of monumental proportions. We've been over this. Dead languages are catalogued, not resurrected. There's no Kingdom of Adzeiba to apply to for a research grant." A soft, knowing chuckle rippled through Dr. Finch and Dr. Lowell, his acolytes. I clenched my fists under the table, the scar on my palm a childhood mark from a ritual cut I never understood thrumming with a familiar, faint heat. "You are a bright student, Kofi," Aldridge continued, leaning forward with a semblance of paternal concern that made my skin crawl. "But this obsession borders on the fanciful. Switch to something substantive. The syntactic structures of Imperial Latin, perhaps. Something with a proper academic lineage." The humiliation was a cold stone in my gut. My work, 3 years of painstaking cross-referencing, of intuiting grammatical rules from missionary mistranslations, of listening to crackling wax cylinder recordings until my ears bled, was being dismissed as a child's fantasy. The rising tension wasn't just in that room. It was in the way my campus housing notice suddenly demanded immediate payment, in the mysterious withdrawal of my promised research stipend, in the thinly veiled suggestion from my advisor that perhaps I'd be happier at an institution more aligned with my cultural interests. Aldridge was systematically boxing me out, ensuring my thesis would fail, and with it, my degree. But I had a secret. The final piece wasn't just theoretical. Weeks before, in a forgotten annex of the university archives, I'd found a crumbling folio not listed in any catalog, the personal, unexpurgated journal of Captain Reginald Blythe, the very colonial officer who'd proclaimed Adzei extinct. Blythe hadn't just transcribed words. He'd obsessively documented coordinates, sketched symbols, and most crucially, recorded a series of tonal chants he called the Stone Songs, which he noted caused queer vibrations in specific rock formations. My analysis revealed these weren't songs. They were sonic keys, precise phonological sequences designed to interact with a specific mineral. The scar on my palm, my grandfather had told me before he died, was the mark of the listener. Using Blythe's notations and my own reconstructed Adzei, I had translated the primary chant. I knew, with a certainty that burned in my veins, what it was for. The shocking twist reveal came not in a classroom, but in a live, public thesis defense, orchestrated by Aldridge to be my final, grand humiliation. He'd invited donors, the press, the whole academic citadel to watch the quixotic student finally fall. The auditorium was packed, a sea of expectant, mostly white faces. I stood alone at the podium, my slides projected behind me. Aldridge, as the primary examiner, began his surgical dismantling. "So, Mr. Mensah, you assert here that the Adzei verb conjugations indicate a society capable of resonant geomancy. A fancy term for what, exactly?" Drum circles, polite laughter echoed. I took a deep breath, the heat in my palm intensifying. I abandoned my script. The language isn't dead, Professor. It's dormant. And it wasn't for poetry. It was for engineering. I clicked to a new slide, one I'd kept hidden. Blythe's coordinate map, overlaid with my linguistic analysis, pointing to a remote valley in present-day Ghana. A murmur went through the crowd. Aldridge's face tightened. Fairy tales bolstered by colonial ephemera. This is not philology. It is archaeology at best, fantasy at worst. Then let's test the fantasy, I said, my voice ringing louder than I'd ever dared. I pulled a small, odd-looking limestone rock from my bag, a sample I'd had shipped from the valley. I described the phonemic principle, how Adzeiba's complex tones, when produced correctly, created a symbiotic resonance with this specific silicate. Aldridge was purpling, sputtering about theatrics. Ignoring him, I began to chant. It started low, the guttural, rolling syllables of the primary stone song from Blythe's journal, refined by my own understanding. The room fell into stunned silence, then nervous tittering. Nothing happened. Aldridge smirked, opening his mouth to deliver the killing blow. But then a faint hum began, not from me, but from the rock on the podium. A visible vibration shook it. A thin, precise beam of blue light, like solidified moonlight, lanced from a crystalline inclusion in the stone and hit the main projection screen, not displaying my slide, but superimposing a stunning, three-dimensional holographic map of a vast, terraced city hidden within a mountain range, its architecture unlike anything recorded in African history. The auditorium erupted in gasps. The map was labeled in flowing Adzeiba script. I translated aloud, my voice trembling with triumph and awe. The granary of Ntoma, the sovereign kingdom of Adzeiba. Coordinates locked, the reversal of power was instantaneous and absolute. The laughter died, replaced by a deafening silence, then a cacophony of shouts from the press, frantic clicking of cameras, and scholars rushing the stage. Aldridge was frozen, his face a mask of utter shock and dawning, horrified understanding. He hadn't just been wrong. He had tried to obliterate a discovery that would rewrite textbooks. I looked directly into the cameras, the blue hologram casting my features in an ethereal glow. This language was never dead. It was waiting. The Adzeiba people didn't vanish. They sealed their knowledge, protecting it from those who would not listen. I turned to Aldridge, whose authority had evaporated into the air like mist. You asked for something substantive, Professor. Is this substantive enough? In that moment, I was no longer the student begging for approval. I was the gatekeeper, the listener, the one who held the key. The university president, previously a silent observer, rushed forward, babbling about research fellowships, endowed chairs, exclusive partnerships. I held up a hand, silencing him. The emotional, satisfying ending came not in their offers, but in my quiet declaration. I announced that all further research would be conducted under the auspices of the Ghanaian government and a council of Ghanaian elders, including my own family, who had preserved fragments of the truth for generations. The intellectual property, the discovery, the legacy, it would not be extracted. It would be returned, and I would lead on my terms. I packed my rock and my notes, walking out of the auditorium past a stunned, silent crowd, past a broken Professor Aldridge. The scar on my palm was cool now, its purpose fulfilled. The lost kingdom was found, and in finding it, I had finally, completely, found my own voice.